Known for taking pity in both relationships and friendships, the INFJ is known to find connections where they end up giving more than they get. Luckily, it takes much more than just unequal give and take for the INFJ to deem a friendship toxic or even remotely unhealthy. So, what are those other red flags? Welcome, or welcome back, psychos! That's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. How to tell if an INFJ is in a toxic friendship. Before we get into it, we'd love it if you liked and subscribed to our channel, as well as to click the post notification bell so you never miss a video. Alright, let's jump right into it, starting with number 1, attachment based on anxiety and fear. The first and most noticeable sign that a friendship may not be what they expected it to be is finding that there is an underlying fear that keeps the connection afloat. In reality, no matter what personality type someone is, if a platonic or romantic connection is based on anxiety, obligation, and fear of loneliness, it may not be as genuine as hoped. Whether the friendship instills fear in either parties, or the connection is surviving merely on fear of being abandoned from one another, panic and unease won't sit right with the INFJ for long. One example of this would be the INFJ's fear of saying no. This people-pleasing personality type needs to question whether they are just sticking around someone because they can't bear to say no and let them down. For the INFJ specifically, these types of emotions wouldn't come up in a genuine friendship built on trust and understanding of each other. Plus, this attachment style is similar to one of the key indicators of abusive romantic partnerships, manipulation. This is when someone has the upper hand on the friendship by consistently convincing the INFJ that they'd be lost without them. This type of emotional abuse can really tear an INFJ's individuality down, leaving them feeling trapped in a friendship that they aren't happy in. Number 2, the terms of the friendship are non-negotiable and one-sided. For the introverted and laid-back INFJ, an abusive friend is one that calls all the shots in the friendship, regardless of the INFJ's opinions or emotions on the matter. This is where the unequal give and take that the INFJ is normally quite okay with in a friendship becomes, well, not okay. Sure, this nonchalant type may be relaxed about certain decisions being made, especially when first meeting a new friend. However, when someone takes those inherent traits and uses them against the INFJ, it's fair that they begin questioning whether or not this friend is someone they should be keeping around. Similar to the attachment based on anxiety and fear, this imbalance creates a type of power hierarchy, where the abusive friend takes from the relationship but never gives in return. If it's completely intentional, these abusive friends often go for more emotionally vulnerable characters who can be easily manipulated into giving more than they get. Unfortunately, INFJs, especially the less experienced ones, fall into this category of emotionally or at least empathetically vulnerable, meaning they're much less likely to call their abusive friend out on their actions, which is exactly what the abuser looks for in their new so-called friends. Number 3, refusing to respect boundaries. Real friendships are consensual, even when the boundaries are somewhat unspoken. Yeah, we get it. INFJs have trouble setting boundaries, and for that reason, sometimes people can overstep their invisible lines. But for the average friendship, boundaries are unspoken rules and are rarely communicated unless crossed. And even though INFJs are also quite conflict avoidant, it doesn't take much to know when they feel they've been pushed past their boundaries. Now, we're not saying friends are toxic if they can't read between the lines of the nonverbal signals the INFJ gives out. However, realistically, if the INFJ is being used by someone for that someone to fulfill their own desires, it's quite obviously a red flag. An example of this would be a friend interpreting an INFJ being too busy to hang out as a direct reflection of how the INFJ feels about them. Unfortunately, this is another reason rather manipulative people like to prey upon the INFJ even in friendships, because they are less likely to make their boundaries painfully apparent, leaving them to often get walked over. a great tip for the INFJ is, instead of thinking of boundaries as limiting another person to what they can and can't do, it's good to look at them as where their livelihood stops and the other person's begins. Number 4. Mental, emotional, and physical exhaustion. INFJs know when they need a break. Although they may not take it when they know they need it, every INFJ comes to a place of exhaustion that is hard to ignore. Whether it's an old job, a repetitive lifestyle, a draining relationship, or, for the purpose of today's topic, a toxic friendship, they can't ignore burnout. Bickering, clinginess, drama, jealousy, and high obligations are all sure signs that an INFJ will reach burnout within a friendship sooner or later. And while it seems like a disadvantage when the INFJ is knee-deep in some type of connection or issue, burnout lets this introverted type know when it's time to pack it in and head home. Luckily, when this intuitive type is pushed to mental, emotional, or physical exhaustion, it forces them to remove themselves from the situation and properly analyze everything they've observed in order to have a clearer picture of what's going on. A blessing in disguise, to put it simply. Number 5. Unwelcome touch or comments. If INFJs could carry around a literally personal bubble, they probably would, despite how difficult it would be to get through doorways. Maybe a simple t-shirt that states, "Please do not touch or converse with without asking," would be a little more logical. All jokes aside, the INFJ, who is known for their detest to large crowds and physical gestures from strangers, much prefer to keep to themselves, even within a friendship. On the same topic of respecting boundaries, things like non-consensual flirting and inappropriate physical touch is a prime example of how an abusive friend can overstep their welcome. Now, no one said it was illegal to date your friend, but for the INFJ, there's a specifically respectful way to approach that, and anything else can make them feel rightfully uncomfortable. No matter the gender, unwelcome touch and remarks are tricky when it comes to friendship, because if the INFJ were to ask them to stop, the embarrassment may lead to serious defensiveness from the other party. Yet, if the INFJ doesn't speak up for themselves, their friend won't know where they stand. And even worse, in an abuser's eyes, an INFJ's silence becomes their consent. Number 6. You make excuses for their behavior. If an INFJ keeps an abusive friend around, it won't be long before other people begin to notice the power imbalance and dissatisfaction the INFJ silently exudes. And when the time comes that someone mentions this observation, it's not rare for the INFJ to become defensive. Not only do INFJs know better deep down inside, but despite their individualistic nature, they deeply value the connections they do have. So, when they themselves begin to question the connection, it can become a whole personal journey that has very little to do with the abusive friend. In fact, when INFJs are debating on whether or not to give up on someone, it becomes a personal growth journey that feels so uncomfortable that they usually try whatever they can to avoid it. This is where the excuses come in. Naturally, INFJs give people the benefit of the doubt, so it's easy for them to see the good a connection has. Maybe an INFJ will rationalize by telling themselves that other people don't have a friendship that's so complex and full of emotion like them, and that those people are missing out. Or maybe the INFJ feels they were called to help this friend despite the rough patches. Number 7. You can't be yourself around them. Known for the chameleon charm, the INFJ can basically make acquaintances anywhere they try. They can easily pick up on the energy of others and alter their demeanor in order to mirror it back to them. However, when they're so busy matching the frequency of others, INFJs mask certain parts of themselves. So, when is this quirky and introspective type supposed to be themselves if not with their closest friends? Sure, they may not let loose around their closest friends to the extent that they would if they were solely in their own company. But if the INFJ can't bring up their woo-woo conversational topics and elaborate ideas without being judged, or if they can't laugh about their rather paradoxical habits and unique tendencies in fear of being ridiculed or corrected by their friend, maybe it's not a right match. Number 8. You feel like you're always wrong around them. There's an endless list of pet peeves that INFJs have when it comes to human connection. However, being challenged with a know-it-all is definitely among the top few. No matter how convincing some people are, no one really knows it all, even the INTP personality type. However, some people play a good game at convincing others they shouldn't ever be challenged. Whether they just like the power of belittling others, or they genuinely refuse to consider other possibilities, if INFJs are constantly holding back their views and opinions, it's not a true friendship. This toxic quality that you'll find in most abusive friendships is a tactic that makes it easier for the abuser to gaslight the INFJ, making them even question their own beliefs and sanity. If this is happening to an INFJ, it's important for them to remember that abusers have a way of wiggling themselves out of situations. They always seem to have an elaborate explanation or rationalization as to why they did something wrong. And with those people, you will never win. Well, psychos, that's it for today's video. So let us know in the comments below if you've ever been stuck in a toxic friendship. Also, make sure to leave us a like, share with your friends, and also subscribe to our channel so that you never miss a video.